So we got a nice variety. We've got a programmer, we got a services and solutions provider, we've got a hardware guy, and we've got an MSO. And I guess I'm from the MSO side of things. So we got a little variety of viewpoints, hopefully on TVE. And this panel came together, in my mind, I reached out to Dan about this back in March when I saw this tweet from a guy named Will Richmond. Some of you may follow him, he's a blogger, covers the space pretty well. And this was March 18th, 10 p.m. in a hotel room somewhere in New York, and he tweets, "I'm having a glorious hashtag TV everywhere moment. In NYC hotel room and TV not working, no prob, watching hashtag Celtics beating the hashtag Heat on Watch ESPN." So that made me happy for a number of reasons. Of course, love to see TV everywhere and the effort we put forth here getting some credit. I also know that Will's from Boston, so he was using his Comcast credentials in that case to authenticate for Watch ESPN. And of course, I'm a Celtics fan. Although he did jinx us. The Heat came back and continued their winning streak that night. So that said, someone was being delighted by the efforts we've put forth in TVE. And I'm hoping the panelists, with their various viewpoints, can share a bit about use cases where you've known customers to be delighted with what's happened so far in TVE. Eric, we'll start with you.
Excellent. So Time Warner Cable has committed two different ways of delighting our customers with streaming media. First one is through DLNA. We have adopted DLNA as a promoting member, and we have implemented DLNA in our lease model set-top box for our multi-room DVR product. Pardon me. Time Warner Cable has invested in DLNA towards our home DVR product and streaming media inside the home. The second way we've invested is also through more traditional TV everywhere. We have deployed our TWC TV application on various mobile platforms and portable platforms. And that is a more traditional streaming media from cloud to ground, so to speak. Those are the two ways that we are trying to delight our customers. And we continue to improve on both of those investments and both of those deployments. Even today, through the DLNA, we are adding more content inside the home. And through our TWC TV application, we continue to add more content from linear and also expanding to on-demand content.
So Glenn, Samsung-wise or otherwise, can you give examples of?
If we're going to go on order, I'll build off that. Samsung, with our devices, we do like them networked so that we can enjoy content from around within the home. So we're also very big on the DLNA guidelines and standards. In fact, I'm a board of director for Samsung for DLNA. We put extra services on top of that called All Share, which we think our consumers get extra value out of, and that's how we begin to look at how to aggregate and give content choices. But we also integrate the apps that are from the MVPDs, so that our consumers can then get those apps on our mobile phones and our tablets as well. We're seeing a strong pull for that, and it's very exciting.
I tend to step back a little bit and I look at sort of the notion of TV everywhere and really what is at its core and how terrific it can be and will be over time. And it really starts with that notion of the TV and TV everywhere. And what I mean by that is that those experiences that take into account the concepts of what we love about TV today, where I'm instantly gratified, where I'm in a frictionless way able to just enjoy the content that I want to be able to consume. To me, those are wonderful consumer experiences. And there's a multitude of examples out there that I personally use and that I've seen, certainly that we've been part of from Cinecor as well. Look at everything ranging from the Olympics to March Madness to experiences that really take into account the totality of what you get on TV. And what I mean by that is not just linear, not just SVOD or VOD, but the full breadth of the experience. And if you can do that in a way that is very similar to the way you can enjoy the television, you just turn it on and it's there. And you look at the reality that the majority of users, when they start to watch TV, have no idea what they want to be able to watch. To me, those are some of the concepts that we're starting to see infused in a lot of these experiences. So I think we're starting to get it, and we still have a ways to go from a market-wide approach. But those are the core elements that I think are really tantamount to creating wonderful consumer experiences.
I guess you have a unique viewpoint in the way that you work with many MSOs and helping them pull this off. You see who's having success or what's resonating in certain markets. You gather that feedback and can you share it when you say, hey, look, this should be higher priority. Let's say the VOD experiences or the linear experiences. Or
Yeah, when we look at it, there's a couple things, and just to double check, my mic is on, right? You guys can all hear okay? It's not just one thing. So when I look at the market and how it's grown and being involved at the early stages of sort of multiplexing and SVOD and VOD and all of these technologies that have grown over time, and certainly internet streaming and now this notion of TVE, the reality is that we're going to live in a world of multitudes or multiplicities. And what I mean by that is there's going to be, for a period of time, for a long period of time, multiple devices, multiple clouds, multiple rights profiles for content, authentication schemes that are not necessarily standardized, content owners creating experiences that are wonderful in and of themselves, as well as the operator creating experiences and trying to bring all of these overall products together. So as we look at that, and we're seeing that some core value proposition drivers are there, right? It's the reality to say, it's okay that the consumer can access content from, let's say, Disney properties directly or from the operator. That's okay. But can we make sense of it for the consumer so they understand that what their credentials are that they need to be able to use? Is there a way to even bypass the credential process and put it in the background? As I know, some operators have tested recently with, in essence, what we call auto authentication. You're just in. And a lot of that processing is done in the background. We also see multiple video players, different video players from different content offerings. So we have to integrate that into our consumer experiences. So there's not really a true set of standards per se. It's a world of multiple standards. So from a B2B standpoint, it's the companies that can help make sense of that for the consumer. And from the B2C standpoint, it's to ensure that your brand is presented in the most effective way, easy to use, consume, not losing sight of the fact that really it's about watching video. And let's not make the user work so hard to enjoy the content that they love.
So Michael named a number of different types of experiences. We know which ones more on the linear side than the VOD side. Obviously, Watch ESPN is focused on. But Damien, you had some time to think about this one. Any other experiences you want to share that you think are the home runs that delight consumers with TV so far?
Yeah, so going last, you're at a disadvantage. What more can I say? Right? It's like,
We also showed us a video this morning of a lot of that. Great.
But I think the term we like to use is it's about the best available screen. And TV Everywhere delivers on that promise. And you can be displaced and not in front of your TV and still be able to enjoy the content you want. And just in a personal experience, I said before, I have 4 kids, and we used to have 2 TVs in our house. Now with TV Everywhere, we have like 12 TVs in our house with all devices. So it's got done a lot of fights in the Phillips household, just so you know. But seriously, it allows people to watch the content they want wherever they are. And it's a very simple premise. And the key for us is, as we've said, is we got to make sure we're reducing the friction to get people the content as fast as possible without any barriers. But TV Everywhere, I think, is in the early innings right now, and you're seeing a lot of progress from content being available out there and the number of devices people are getting on.
So let's start with you, I guess, on this one, which is around, there are a lot of experiences. When is an experience good enough to talk about it? Which is to say, you might not have, if you're an MSO, every content provider giving you the same type of access, or you might not be on every platform with a product you release, but yet you want to be out talking about what you've done so far and certainly getting credit for it.
Yeah. If you look at the spectrum of TV Everywhere apps that are out there, not every network is available, and not every network or not every device is accessible right now for some of these things. I really look at this as more of a personal experience. I'm a sports fan. I like certain movies, I like certain TV shows. And I think what's happening is people are really personalizing their own experience around TV Everywhere. So that's where I think it's going. It's about more personal choice and the fact that it's not consistent across everything. And I think that does cause some frustration for fans or for viewers, but it's still the early stages here. We're just getting started.
So how about you, Eric? Do you have any viewpoint on this, I guess, about, and Michael, get your take as well, because you advise MSOs on this. I would say that from our experience. For example, at Comcast, someone said to me, I just realized that I could have downloaded, or I downloaded Homeland and watched it on my iPad while I was on the train to Boston. I didn't know I could do that. Why haven't you told anybody that download to go is part of the Xfinity TV app? And I guess the answer would be, in that case, we've got relationships with Showtime and Starz and others who let us do that. But if not everybody's there and you announce that that's possible, people might get more upset, perhaps, that what they're looking for can't do that. What about you? How do you decide when to talk about one of your services?
That's a good question. It really comes down to a critical mass, right? It's a mix of sort of features of accessibility, features of how people want to interact with that content, and also the critical mass of the content itself. And as Time Warner Cable has shown, we have demonstrated and deployed an iterative process in our TWC TV application to where we've started out with a few linear channels. We expanded it quite quickly to a lot of linear channels. We're expanding even more to VOD content. And it's not quite the same content, or it's not quite the same quantity, I should say, as what we have through our lease model products and our set tops. But we feel like that critical mass is enough to where we are still delighting the consumer rather than making them wait or confusing them. With our deployment of DLNA and streaming inside the home, it was actually a different thing. We turned on a product that was pretty mature and pretty full. You get DVR content from our lease model set-tops today through DLNA, and all of it. There's not any sort of line of demarcation of what is available and what is not. If you have a DLNA device in your home and it can see a set-top, you can see the DVR content.
Before actually Glenn and Michael answer this, I realize as we're tossing around terms like DLNA, it might be helpful for us as the panelists to know kind of the depth of experience in the room, and I'm kind of curious who's in the room. So can we ask who here is on the programmer side in the room? Would you guys put your hands up? A few programmers. How about on the MVPD, MSO provider side? A few of those. Advertisers, brand marketers. Is everybody else a technology solutions provider? What technology solutions providers? A few of those? Okay, so people are pretty experienced certainly in knowing the building blocks of this. How about you, Glenn? When do you guys decide that something from a TV perspective is worth making it into the marketing for a Samsung experience?
I'm going to answer this in a little bit sort of obscure way. I look back at a lot of things, the way things have been deployed in the consumer's home and when consumers adopt and don't adopt. Wi-Fi is a beautiful example of when it first came out was really a pain in the butt to be able to use. And back in that time, most people had home computers, for example, didn't really need Wi-Fi. With the drive of the laptop, the flexibility then of being able to use anything around your house, they started using Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi didn't actually get any easier for them to use and to hook up, but there was a need. It was a consumer need that they wanted. They wanted to be able to wander around the house with their laptop, and so they put themselves through pain, to get these Wi-Fi access networks. And to this day, I mean, we still put ourselves through pain with printers for some reason. I don't know that one. But so now you talk about these services. And I think we're on a hockey stick here, and I think it's about to really take off where the utility is greater than the frustration. So some of these apps are coming, not all the channels are there, but they know that, they're learning that, and they get mad, and they give us service calls, and they call you, everyone. But to not give it to them as soon as possible, I think it would be doing ourselves a disfavor now, as long as they're not buggy, of course. But that's what I see. I see it's really, the education of the consumer is ramping up a lot faster than, the movement from VHS to DVD or something like that.
Michael, you have anything to add to that point?
Yeah, sure. I think we all know that sort of the majority of the marketplace is still not fully aware of TV everywhere, and even that they have it, right? So there's an education process at a macro level that has not necessarily taken hold yet. And you sort of run the risk of what I like to call creating a habit-forming experience. And so if you create an announcement that you have one piece of content available, and the consumer comes back once or twice and is not really satisfied with that, that's sort of the danger. So what we've seen with our customers is they are going with the major brands first and realizing that multiple brand or a brand may have multiple nets, which in essence allows them to have a larger breadth of content. Some also are triggering within the metadata OTT content. So in essence, if they're creating awareness about these experiences, the notion is let's not dead end a consumer. If even we don't offer it, meaning the operator doesn't offer it because of the rights, perhaps an OTT offering is available either through Amazon or Netflix. That's not all of our customers, but some of them. So sort of getting the notion that you need to have a compelling reason to come back, not just the first or second time, but multiple times, is really key. What I've said, I've gone on record and stated this, and I've had some debate, but being involved in the early stages of TVE with HBO, and now certainly at Cinecore on a much broader scale, I really feel, and I see this at 2013, this year that we're in right now, is truly the year of TVE from the standpoint of just working with all the content providers, the pure number of players, video players that we're working to integrate into our consumer experiences on behalf of our customers, and the fact that my specific team has grown just to handle that is really telling. So I think the critical mass happens, and then it's really beholden on the operator and also the content provider, but even using the TV to promote it, using either local avails or whatever access they have to be able to tout it and say, guess what, you have this, and this is how you get it. Not too dissimilar to the early days of SVOD, where awareness was low early on, and once you created awareness, then you had to tell them where to get it, and then usage started to sort of grow from there.
So when we talked about, for example, these different services that are worth talking about, how do we decide what to build next? How do we decide if you're going to be, let's say, I think an approach that ESPN seems to have taken, maybe is like what HBO took. You mentioned this morning, Damon, that you guys were trying to be on every platform. Maybe sometimes prioritizing that over adding bells and whistles to the app as it exists on a current platform today. How do you map out what you want to do next?
It's you have a finite amount of resources, and you have to invest those resources and capital wisely. And we have a saying we use is that we don't want to drive the 2011 model in 2013. We want to make sure we're constantly innovating and creating new features and functionality. At the same time, we're also trying to get out to all these different platforms and devices. And I think over the top this year, the set-top boxes are getting very interesting. I think for TV everywhere and video content in general. And it's interesting what some of the MVPDs are doing in their space with their own set-top boxes. So we try to play to scale, and we try to follow the consumer demand. So it is a very tough thing to figure out in terms of features and functionality versus scale. And you don't want to be either or, but sometimes it is. And we tend to focus in on making sure we're creating the best experience possible, making sure we always have the latest and greatest, and then carve out time to make sure we're hitting the devices that have scale. And that's been our philosophy since day one.
So on the MSO side, obviously you guys were talking about DLNA and in-home, and certainly you've got live streaming everywhere for Time Warner Cable's apps, which is great feature. You've prioritized that, for example, more than, let's say, video on demand. I mean, on the Comcast side, we've been trying to do as much, VOD via TV as possible. How do you guys pick what you're going to work on first and what's kind of coming next?
That's a good question. So generally, we prioritize linear over on demand simply just to push the envelope. And not necessarily because it was more important one way or the other. It pushed the envelope, and we do see linear TV as still one of the most compelling applications of television there remains to be. As we take a look at what technologies to apply and what policies to apply going forward, it is generally to enhance the experience and help connect these experiences between a portable device and what's in the home and also what's out of the home, and try and enable our customers to access that content whenever they want, wherever they want, on their terms, not necessarily on our terms. And that's really where we're going towards. It's a guiding principle, so to speak, and not necessarily, well, we're going to pick this technology over this technology.
Do you do a lot of research first? And
Yep, just like you guys do.
Okay.
Yes,
I was
absolutely.
going to say, what about your research, Mike? When you guys tell somebody, look, I know you're really focused on doing X, we think this, based on what we've seen, may help you reduce churn or whatever the immediate goal seems to be. Do you help people prioritize?
Yeah, we definitely do, and there's some core tenets, right? So the notion of platform versus features and functionality, being involved on both the content provider side and now in my role where I could sort of sit in the middle. I've often seen that you can get bogged down in features and functionality that may not necessarily be relevant at the time. So of course you start to sort of then say, okay, well that's version 1.1 and 1.2. So we try to give guidance to our clients to basically focus on satisfying the core proposition of watching television. And get on as many platforms as you possibly can within reason, and you need to sort of prioritize that as well. To your point, you have limited resources, so it's easier said than done. And part of that is you have to really satisfy on that core point of being able to, once you come to that experience, I'll use it again, can I quickly get to the content? Can I quickly search and find it? And then also, what is the relationship between that device that I'm on and the ecosystem of devices that I'm on? So for instance, if I'm able to bookmark where I left off on the television, on the tablet device, if I'm able to remote tune or change the channel on one device, schedule to the DVR, and all of those different capabilities that start to become logical and core to the process of watching television and enjoying it, we try to give that level of guidance. But we're constantly staying close to the marketplace in sort of a formal and informal way. We're talking to content owners every day. We're hearing what their pain points are and also what the operators' pain points are. So we're really at this to be quite honest, it's a very cool strategic position in the middle of this, from the consumer, the distributor, and the content provider, and that sort of helps add value in our conversation with our clients.
What's the hardware provider's role in this, Glenn? I mean, are you also kind of advising, and what do you need to do to have people build to your platform? I mean, it's been announced that Time Warner Cable's building for you guys, Xfinity's building for you guys, ESPN, has done a bunch of work on picking their OTT platforms. What's the hardware provider's role in the discussion?
There's conflicting roles. I got to answer this carefully. One of the views, of course, especially when you're in multiple channels of hardware, TVs, tablets, phones, you want to get this content on all these devices. You want to enable MVPDs. You want to enable YouTube. So, how do we do that? What's the right way? What's the right approach? You saw Netflix. If you're in the Netflix meeting here this morning, you saw how they had this problem of so many different profiles, so many different devices. So one of my key areas driving this DLNA, for example, and other industry organizations like DEC for the DRM content and whatnot, is a uniform way to get this content onto all the devices. So internally, it's a struggle because we have, internal methodologies we have to coalesce, and externally we have to talk to all you guys about how are we going to get this. How can an app developer, not have to make hard choices like which platform to develop for first? What if it's just an HTML5 app or something like that? Things like that. Then from a hardware point of view, how do you get access to the hardware for the processing performance if it is an HTML5 app? So what do we got to do there? And what about all the different DRMs and the transcoding, 4K coming? So yeah, we have a lot of different tangents we're investigating right now to help get this ecosystem growing as fast as possible.
Is there outreach? Is there a sandbox that you have to let people play in? Great documentation. What else?
Well, we have so Samsung itself has outreach. It has developer communities as SDKs and whatnot. To try to bring people in to develop for our hardware. And of course, we're always looking at listening to new service ideas, service models that can add some value to our hardware devices.
Great. We're going to do a few more questions. If people start thinking of questions in the audience, we'll turn it over to you guys in a second. Question around where this watching is going to happen. We've talked about how your app is on so many different platforms, and your content is also within MSO's apps or experiences. There's a study from GFK Media earlier in the year talking about, of 1,000 cable subs surveyed about TVE, 34% of them said that they've accessed content using the content owner's mobile app. And 26% of them said that they've watched the content using their service provider's TVE app. And given the loyalties to and awareness of brands versus, the MVPDs, but also then there's the convenience of an aggregated experience. And I know that you guys are each going to have your viewpoints on this, but where do you think this viewing is going to happen in the future? Might it be easier to view multiple channels within one MVPDs app, or is it always going to be that HBO Go provides such a rich experience, or Watch ESPN provides such a rich experience, I'll constantly open up new apps for each program I want to watch?
I think we don't, at ESPN, we don't care where you watch. We just want you to watch. And it's about having 10,000 front doors into your content. So being on the Comcast site is very important to us. Being on the Time Warner sites, very important. On their apps, very important to us. We don't care where you watch. What we do care about is, can we measure it? Can we monetize it? Can we secure it? And can we enforce blackouts or things like that of that nature? That's what we care about. But where you watch doesn't matter.
You agree, Eric?
Yes, I would say that, like you were mentioning, the viewpoint is slightly different in that we also want to enable our customers to watch all their content wherever they want to be. We have some interest in that aggregation aspect of it, as far as if we can simplify the access to content by having at least portals to it in our own apps or in our HTML5 applications. That's how we would prefer it, simply because if you want to come back and watch something else, then you might as well come back to us rather than try and go through however many clicks on the open internet or app to app on your mobile device. So it's really that simplification kind of guiding principle that drives our interest in aggregating as much of those portals as possible.
So what do you think, Michael? Is it that kumbaya in reality? I mean, I know that, for example, if it's easier to authenticate, more people watch ESPN, they sell more ads, run more ads. MVPDs have to make sure people are paying their cable bills, though.
Yeah. I think it's as simple as that. Look, I've seen the evolution where it's been like, no, it needs to be on this site, it needs to be on this site, it needs to be, and the reality is I am totally seconding what you just mentioned. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's about satisfying the consumer experience, and can I monetize it, and can I ensure that I'm serving up that content to the right consumer in the way that's relevant. So it's been a level of enlightenment in the industry, I think, but also at the same time that makes all of our jobs that much more difficult, right? And exponentially more challenging, but very, very exciting at the same time. So in essence, if I want to go to one content supplier site and they only offer streaming on demand, but the operator may offer 250 live linear channels, and I can still get to that same streaming on demand content, that's the consumer choice. And I think it's about serving that customer in the most optimal way and really satisfying what they want to be able to do, which is engage with that content immediately.
So the openness wins. It's just a lot of hard work for all of us to make sure the business rules are there, the measurement is there, and so forth.
But at Synacor, we love the hard work, so that's okay.
Can I make one comment you guys didn't mention is, how do you find the content? And this is I think there's opposing forces at work here about, say, access to metadata. But the point is, for ESPN Watch, if I want to watch a football game and all I know is the name of the team, how do I know where to find it? And I think we need to also solve that problem, because you've already heard today on the mobile phone there's too many apps. And what we're seeing is an explosion of apps for content now. But if everybody's a different app, again, when I come running into the room and I want to watch this game, where is it? And
that's a key point. And even as a user myself, right, as I'm looking for something, that's a challenge. So I think that even if we're living in a world of apps, you need to, in essence, federate the search across those apps. You also have to get access to the metadata. And back to what I was saying earlier, the consumer comes to, let's say, one place where they can search and find the content. If they're channeled off after that, that's okay too. But being able to satisfy that notion of help me find, discover, recommend, but most importantly, that sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I want to watch a sporting event, help me find it immediately. That's a challenge in the industry, and certainly some are solving it better than others, but it's a very solvable challenge.
I think that's the future of TV, is that it's a more personalized experience. And take a step further, you shouldn't have to go to your TV to find out what's on it should be pushed to your phone or your mobile device. So in the future, personalization becomes the navigation that we all need to make TV a better experience.
That's an interesting point. So I feel like a lot of that is being tackled by small, nimble companies, startups, players like Digit with this Next Guide app that really look across all services to identify for you what content's available that meets your personal interests. And for that to happen, I imagine you guys want to make a feed of everything you're doing available. Or for us, I mean, at Comcast, we built this thing, the developer portal for the TVE ecosystem or developers of second screen apps, where we give them everything that's available on XfinityTV.com so they can know and add it to their apps in a feed, or like even things like send commands to my DVR. It used to be something that could only happen within Comcast. Now it can happen on partners' sites and applications. So that sort of openness makes sure that your consumers engage with your content or your service wherever they are. So are you guys taking steps to be more open in this way? And is there a tolerance within your organizations for any risk that comes with letting more of the action happen off of your properties?
Sure, I'll take that. The biggest step that I see is like Time Warner Cable and Samsung working together within DLNA for premium content guidelines. That is a totally new step in openness towards getting our interfaces exposed even more through our lease model products to consumer and electronic devices. That is definitely one place where we are looking to deploy the entirety of our services on non-lease model devices for the first time.
And I would say from our standpoint, as I mentioned, Cinecore is sitting sort of right in the middle of that, and we aggregate massive amounts of metadata, and more each day from multiple sources. So to me, the trick is in the metadata and having it available, and that's either dealing directly with the content supplier, the distributor, and/or third parties that be able to offer that as a service. So we aggregate that, and that's your search is only as good as that. And the way that you start to get more personalized experiences is through tracking consumption, but also mapping it back to the availability of content and serving that up across multiple platforms.
How about you, Dave? I know ESPN has presented at like Mashery's conferences talking about APIs that they've been working on and making available, and maybe some third party comes up with the ultimate TVE experience, and it's just that you enabled them to do it by being open.
Yeah, we're talking to a number of companies trying to figure out this personalization piece, we think that we're not there yet, but this is something that we're putting a lot of resources behind to get there. And if it's us doing it ourselves or working with a third party, we're open. We want to create the best TV experience possible. Metadata obviously is key, and we have information on our own data. We have information on usage. How do you tie that back to what someone's doing on Facebook, what someone's doing on Twitter? There's all these things. There's all these directions you can go here, and we're trying to figure it out. But we like our chances to figure it out soon.
Great. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've got a mic which should be hot right there. If you're kind of far from the mic, I guess we don't want people walking in front of the camera, so you can ask the question and I'll repeat it. But if you're near the mic, please feel free to jump up there and fire away for our panelists. Go ahead. Oh, you ask it, I'll repeat it.
Probably more directed to the MSOs. What do you see as the roadmap for IP set-top boxes where they're hitting critical mass to where they eventually become reach clients for OTT content? And the second part of that is how does your CDN strategy, public or private, fit into the delivery of OTT content to those devices?
So a two-part question was about hybrid set-top boxes, and kind of the next generation of set-top boxes from MSOs, and about how the CDN strategy changes when you have that type of implementation kind of broadly through your footprint. Do you want to speak to that, Eric? First?
Sure, I can certainly address the first one. As somebody very interested in lease model devices and critical mass of that capability of IP, I would say that over the last few years, as cable companies and multiple service providers really have been shipping products that are capable of this feature for quite some time. What we are now working with is how we're going to collect and unify like the search feature and trying to get these new ways of watching content onto those devices. And it's a difficult model, not necessarily to break, but to change. As I'm sure some of you know, lease model devices, they're embedded devices. They are meant to last a very long time in the field. And upgrading them takes some work. And when it comes to, as an earlier question was referencing, deciding to work on improving the lease model device or expanding our services onto new and more exciting devices, it's been a tough one. But in general, we've been investing in 2 different places at once, in-home and this portable device market. So we're continuing to work on it. So I think to close out the answer, I believe the critical mass is quite close, even today.
I mean, quickly for Comcast, there's a box that we've got called X1, which is our new set-top boxes. They're hybrid IP and quantum delivery boxes, and they're in a few markets. They were announced at a cable show a number of years ago, but and I think it really delights consumers to have an experience that's much richer and allows for apps and allows for a really new guide look that's can be updated from the Comcast side really easily on a regular basis. So it's a great consumer experience. There's a refresh coming to it. They're doing a really nice job with that box. It's we're 22 million, I think, video subscribers, and it's a small subset that have been able to get the box so far, but we'd like more people to have that great experience.
Yeah, I think from a programmer perspective, we're really excited about IP delivery over set-top boxes. ESPN3, which is our internet TV network, 4,300 live events. Now it's on your tablet and your phone, but if we can get that on a set-top box, right on your television, and be frictionless, that's where we want to be.
Okay. Other questions?
What about TVs and other IP devices like Roku's, Apple TVs? Are you guys, how aggressive are you in authenticating which one?
So the question is around additional OTT devices and how are MVPDs authenticating their services on those platforms. I would say just real quickly, obviously a lot of these things depend on rights from programmers, and there's a version of the Xfinity TV app on Xbox, let's say today. It's been announced that we're working with Samsung. I mean, again, there's a whole competing set of priorities, and but we want our customers to get the maximum value out of the service, and if they want to try and watch it through Xbox, we're doing our best to support that. Given, again, we talked about earlier, if you can't provide the full slate of things, how big do you go with it? So we're working on it.
And that's similar to what we've seen with our clients as well. So we have capabilities that will enable that in a very seamless and frictionless way, and it's a matter of prioritization and what's in the queue. But certainly very, very open to expanding to those multiple platforms, because I know at the end of the day that's where the consumer's going to be, along with where they are with the core experiences.
One of the biggest obstacles is standardization. When an MVPD must write an app for every device that's out there, and must write a different app for different versions of that device, it becomes daunting. And paying attention to standardization or critical mass of devices, and not just the device itself and its stature in the marketplace, so to speak, or position, but when people are actually using it to consume video, that's a great sweet spot that we've been focusing on. But again, that the sort of permutations problem does become quite large.
Some of the just really quick, some of the pain points with these boxes as well is that when we're talking, and I brought this up earlier, that whole notion of multiple apps, and you need different credentials to get into each one. So again, in being able to search across the multiple apps, so it's the word I use a lot, federation, but if I'm able to basically federate the search and discovery across that experience and federate the login, the consumer doesn't even think about that, right? It's just basically I'm in, I can enjoy the content, and I'm searching for, let's say, Game of Thrones, and it may be available through one experience, but I don't have to go into that experience to search for it. It just simplifies the entire proposition.
Great. Other questions?
As part of the frustrations you talk about, there's the authentication part, but then there's the sort of what I call non-participating providers. And not to single out ESPN, but as we sat here, I downloaded watch ESPN, and DirecTV and Dish aren't on there. So it's 30 plus million subscribers that are sort of left out of some of this stuff. How does that? And I know you're not alone, but
Yep.
just as an example, where's the issue with that?
Well, I
Dave,
think it
you
goes
want to
back.
rephrase the question for everybody?
Yeah, one of the frustrations is.
I'm sorry, recite.
Yeah. One of the frustrations he brought up is the fact that you can download these apps and try to use them, but your TV provider is not one of the participating providers on these apps. And he cited out ESPN as one of those. So with Watch ESPN, we have deals with 8 of the top 10 MVPDs. I think the ones you mentioned we don't have deals with. And it's a process. We want to be able to serve all fans. At the same time, we're trying to figure out a distribution model that works. And we're hopeful that over time we'll be able to bring in every single MVP that's out there. But it's a process, and I think it goes back to your question earlier that when do you reach critical mass? Well, we're in 55 million households, so more people have it than don't have it today, and it's just a matter of time as we talk to others to try to bring everybody on board.
Anybody else on that one? All right. More questions?
A number of broadcasters working on initiatives.
Actually, Mike is right there. We'd love to hear it loud and clear. Great, thank you.
A number of the broadcasters have been working on initiatives to better utilize their spectrum. And one of those initiatives is broadcasting a mobile DTV signal to get into mobile devices. So my question is, do you see that as a part of TV everywhere?
Mobile broadcast is a path to TV everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I'd say to that is that certainly that's just yet another technology or protocol, if you will, to serve up the content, right? It's beholden on where Cinecore sits is basically to incorporate the multitudes of technology that are out there and serve it up in a very seamless way to the consumer. So for instance, if that's an opportunity and an operator was on board with that to be able to serve that content through a consumer experience, we would enable that for them, assuming that was acceptable. I know there were early trials with that a decade ago, right? And we all know what those are, using either the UHF signals, and certainly there's been fits and starts and stops. I think wireless will definitely be a core part of the proposition moving forward and being able to serve up those streams. And live TV is going to be very core to TV everywhere. So there's certainly an opportunity for that.
There's an initiative called Dial. Yeah. I'm not super close to it, mind you, but I know people are taking approaches to this. But actually, as you were talking, what occurred to me was that last week there was a whole flurry of announcements, certainly ABC, and maybe our Disney representative can comment on this, but they talked about how they kind of grabbed the TV experience and they're going to let you watch ABC on iOS platforms and everything, but you're going to have to authenticate with your cable provider credentials, which is interesting because they're a broadcast network. Damon, has that been a point of discussion within the company? I mean, it's not your world exactly, but
our TV everywhere model, is to make it authenticated, is to provide value to the television subscription that you have, and all of our watch products across the Walt Disney Company are based on that same model, where it's all based on authentication.
People have done. I mean, you've done a nice job with that at ESPN. So have other Disney brands followed the playbook, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's by design, all of our apps have watch in front of them. So we're trying to solve some of the awareness issues with consistency. So you see a watch product, it's TV everywhere, and we're able to share best practices across the company with our counterparts at ABC. So it's a nice way to share information back and forth in terms of what's working and what's not working, and it's a good relationship.
Great.
What's really fascinating here, when you look at this, when the early stages of TVE, and as I had mentioned, we're evolving, right? The content available was really streaming on demand for the first stages of TVE. And back to what we talked about earlier, live TV is very compelling, it's very powerful, and I think will drive TVE usage and awareness around that. So it's terrific to see the marketplace moving in that direction very, very, very fast. And even, as I'd mentioned, I think Time Warner Cable is doing a terrific job of offering over 250 linear streams available, and you're seeing it now directly from the content provider. That will be a key point to boost overall TV consumption.
Great. Well, on that general and broad and very positive note, thank you, Michael. I think it's probably time to wrap up here. People have got lunch to get to, but please join me in thanking the panelists for sharing their TV insights.
Thank you.